The most powerful force controlling your life right now is not another person. It is your own legibility. The moment you become fully readable, fully predictable, fully available, fully explained, you have handed the map of yourself to everyone who knows how to use one. And people use maps, not always consciously, not always maliciously, but the person who understands your patterns, who can predict your reactions, who knows what you need and what you fear and what will move you, that person holds something over you that is far more durable than physical leverage. They hold your predictability. And predictability is the mechanism by which most human control operates. You have felt this. The relationship where someone knew exactly which words would destabilize you and used them. The workplace dynamic where your eagerness to please was the precise tool that got you overloaded. The negotiation where showing how much you wanted the outcome was what weakened your position. In every case, the leverage was not external. It was the information you provided through your reactions, your availability, your explanations, your need, that gave the other person their advantage. Niccolò Machiavelli spent his career mapping this mechanism with unusual precision. He watched it operate in every court, every alliance, every political negotiation he was party to as a diplomat for Florence. He watched princes lose their thrones, not to enemies with superior armies, but to the simple fact of being readable, of having made their dependencies, their fears, and their patterns visible in ways that others could operate against. He wrote in The Prince, chapter 18, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. What appears to be is the surface you have made legible. What you really are is what you have had the discipline to keep folded." The 12 Machiavellian principles circulating in popular culture are real observations, compressed and sometimes distorted, about how power actually moves through human relationships. But most people consume them as a list of tactics, 12 things to do to become powerful. That is the wrong read. They are 12 observations about one underlying mechanism, and the mechanism is legibility. Understanding it changes how you read every one of them. By the end of this, you will understand why legibility is the primary mechanism of control, what Machiavelli was actually observing when he recorded these principles, and the 4 things that produce genuine illegibility, not as performance, but as a stable condition of someone who has done the work. The map they use to find you is the one you drew yourself. Part 1. The Legibility Problem. Every reaction you give is a data point. Enough data points and you become a system others can run. Legibility is the quality of being readable. A legible person is one whose next move can be predicted from their previous moves, whose emotional state can be inferred from their expression, whose needs can be identified from their behavior, whose limits can be tested and verified from their responses to pressure. A legible person is, in the clearest sense, a system that others can learn to operate. This is not a metaphor for cruelty. Most of the people who operate you do not think of themselves as doing so. They have simply learned, through repeated interaction, what produces what result with you. They have discovered that a particular kind of attention gets a particular response, that a specific kind of withdrawal produces a specific kind of pursuit, that you can be relied upon to explain yourself when challenged, to accommodate when pressured, to respond when ignored. These are not sinister discoveries. They are simply patterns, and patterns once identified become leverage, whether or not the person holding them ever consciously intends to use them that way. The first of what the source scripts describe as Machiavellian laws, that people respect what they cannot easily access, is an observation about legibility. The person who is always available has made their availability fully legible. It can be taken for granted. It requires no investment from the people who benefit from it. What is predictably present is budgeted for without being valued. What is unpredictably present, what appears selectively, what requires some version of investment or alignment to access, carries a weight that constant availability cannot. Not because withholding is virtuous, but because scarcity, real or structural, creates a different relationship between the resource and the person who wants it. Consider how differently you treat time from someone whose calendar is genuinely hard to get into versus someone who always says yes. The first person's time feels significant when you receive it. The second person's time is a given. It is already factored into your plans before you have asked. Neither person is performing anything. The first simply has something genuinely competing for their time. The legibility of their availability is lower, and that lower legibility changes the valuation entirely, without either person having done anything strategic at all. The same operates for attention, for emotional investment, for opinion. What is given freely and constantly is discounted. What arrives selectively, at intervals the observer cannot fully predict, carries information. It feels like a signal rather than background noise. Most people have been trained to maximize their availability as a display of care. Machiavelli's observation is that this training, however well-intentioned, produces a structural disadvantage in almost every human dynamic. The same principle operates in emotional availability. The person whose reactions are entirely predictable, who can be reliably angered by a specific kind of provocation, reliably flattered into compliance, reliably destabilized by a specific kind of withdrawal, has in effect published the instruction manual for their own manipulation. This is not a character failing. It is the natural result of being fully expressed in an environment where not everyone who reads that expression has your interests at heart. What Machiavelli observed, and what the best of the 12 laws is actually pointing at, is that the distance between what you feel and what you choose to show is not dishonesty. It is the most basic form of strategic self-protection available to any person operating in a social environment. Men judge by the eye, he noted in chapter 18. Most people evaluate others based on what they can observe, the reaction, the expression, the pattern of behavior over time. The person who controls what is observable has, in a precise and non-metaphorical sense, controlled what others can use. The legibility problem is not solved by becoming cold, or evasive, or deliberately confusing. It is solved by becoming genuinely less dependent on outcomes, genuinely more consistent in private than in public performance, and genuinely more deliberate about what you express and when. These are internal conditions. They cannot be faked for long, but they can be built, and building them is the work the 12 laws are pointing toward, even when they do not say so clearly. Part 2. What Machiavelli actually observed. The prince who needed the people's love was controlled by whoever threatened to withdraw it. Machiavelli was born in Florence in 1469 and spent his career as a diplomat, civil servant, and careful observer of political power at close range. He was not a theorist who read about power in libraries. He negotiated with Cesare Borgia at the height of Borgia's terrifying expansion across central Italy. He was sent to the French court and watched Louis XII manage a kingdom by making himself useful to everyone and indispensable to no one. He watched the Medici fall to popular revolt and return through military force. He watched capable men lose everything, not to enemies with superior armies, but to the simple fact of having become readable, of having made their dependencies, their fears, and their patterns visible in ways that others had learned to operate. The chapter that gives us the most useful frame for the 12 laws is not, as is often assumed, chapter 17, the one about fear and love, but chapter 9, his analysis of the civic prince, the ruler who comes to power with the support of the people. Machiavelli's warning is precise. The prince who owes his position to popular support is in a structurally weaker position than the prince who has built his power on firmer foundations, because the people are fickle, and the prince who needs their love will always be at the mercy of whoever can threaten to withdraw it. His dependence on their approval is the handle by which he can be controlled. This is the deepest of the 12 laws, buried beneath the surface formulations. Not withhold yourself to create mystery, but understand the structural consequences of dependence. Any person, institution, or relationship that you need badly enough to compromise your position for has leverage over you proportional to how much you need it. This is not cynicism, it is mechanics. And Machiavelli was a mechanic of political reality in the most literal sense. Let me say something here directly, because this part of his thinking is routinely used to justify a kind of emotional detachment that produces not power but damage. I have watched people absorb the Machiavellian framework, particularly the laws around showing no weakness, trusting no one, and choosing advantage over loyalty, and use them to construct a life that is strategically impregnable and humanly empty. They are not controlled by others. They are also not genuinely connected to anyone. They have eliminated the leverage points and eliminated the relationships simultaneously. The strategy worked and the life collapsed around it. Machiavelli was not recommending this. He was describing a political problem in a specific historical context, not a template for living across the full range of human experience. If this kind of thinking is useful to you, the ideas that don't get softened, the ones that actually ask something of you, subscribe to Wise Daily. That's what we're here for. What Machiavelli was pointing at in his observations about restraint, silence, reputation, and unpredictability is not a personality to adopt. It is a set of structural conditions to understand. The prince who had built genuine alliances, genuine institutional support, genuine self-sufficiency. That prince was not performing independence. He had actually removed the leverage points that would otherwise have been used against him. The performance of independence without the substance is exactly what he warned against. The prince who appears not to need anything while secretly needing everything is the most catastrophically vulnerable of all, because when the performance fails, there is nothing underneath. This is what gives the 12 laws their actual weight. They are not instructions for a performance. They are observations about what genuine self-sufficiency, genuine illegibility looks like from the outside and what produces it from the inside. Part 3. The 4 principles. The 12 laws, read carefully, reduced to 4. These are not tactics, they are structural conditions that, when genuinely present, produce the quality the thumbnail names staying out of reach. The first principle is scarcity. What is rationed is valued. What is constant is budgeted for. This is not an instruction to withhold yourself artificially. Artificial scarcity is detectable and eventually contemptible. It is an observation about the relationship between availability and value that operates independently of anyone's intentions. The practical implication is not be less available, but rather have enough of a life, enough genuine interests, relationships, and commitments that your availability is genuinely limited. The person whose time is genuinely scarce because they have something worth doing is in a fundamentally different position from the person who is artificially unavailable as a technique. One is performing scarcity, the other has it. And the difference is felt by anyone paying close attention, because the person with genuine scarcity has a quality of absorption, of being genuinely present elsewhere that performance cannot replicate. The second principle is restraint. What you withhold cannot be used against you. The emotional reaction that goes unexpressed cannot be catalogued and deployed. The plan that goes unannounced cannot be anticipated and countered. The vulnerability that is not performed publicly cannot become the lever that moves you. Restraint is not suppression. It is the discipline of choosing deliberately what to express and when, rather than expressing everything as it arises. This is the principle behind the laws about silence, about controlling your reactions, about not arguing when argument only exposes need. The practical implication is the development of the pause, the moment between the feeling and the expression in which the choice is made. What you ration is valued. What is constant is discounted. What you withhold cannot be turned against you. What you express becomes available to everyone who witnessed it. What you do consistently, in private as in public, becomes the reputation that works without your presence. The third principle is consistency. Reputation is not what you say about yourself. It is the pattern others observe over time, under varying conditions, including the conditions you did not know they were watching. The prince who behaved the same way when he believed he was unobserved as when he knew he was watched, had built something that no performance could replicate. A reputation grounded in actual character rather than managed impression. People's assessment of your character is formed largely in the moments they observe you, when you did not know you were being assessed. The look on your face when you are told no. The way you treat someone who can do nothing for you. The speed with which you recover your composure when something goes wrong. These are the data points that form the permanent record. The practical implication is the oldest and most demanding of all. Become, in private, what you want to be known for in public. Not as a performance strategy, but as the only approach that holds under observation over time. The fourth principle is genuine illegibility. Not the performance of mystery, but the condition of someone who has genuinely fewer predictable responses, genuinely fewer dependencies, genuinely more internal territory than can be observed from the outside. The thumbnail's 5 figures are all illegible in different ways. You cannot read their faces, cannot identify their motives, cannot predict their next move. They stay out of reach not by hiding, but by having no single interpretable surface to grasp. The person who is genuinely working on the first 3 principles, building real scarcity, practicing genuine restraint, living with private consistency, becomes illegible as a byproduct, not by design, by depth. And this is the only illegibility that lasts. Performed mystery dissolves under pressure. Genuine illegibility deepens under it, because pressure reveals character. And the character underneath is exactly what the surface suggested. Part 4. The folded map. There is a moment when a person stops being operated and starts operating. It does not arrive with a revelation or a tactic. It arrives when the internal conditions have finally changed, when the dependencies that were being leveraged have been reduced, when the reactions that were being triggered have been brought under enough deliberate control that they no longer fire automatically, when the need for a specific outcome has been replaced by the equanimity of someone who has real alternatives. Machiavelli understood that this transition was the whole game, not the tactics. The tactics were merely what the transition made possible. The prince who had genuinely built his position did not need to be mysterious or withholding or strategically unpredictable. He was simply difficult to operate because there was no obvious lever to pull. The preparation in quieter times, building the alliances, developing the resources, establishing the reputation, meant that when pressure arrived, it found a structure that absorbed it, rather than a person who buckled under it. The 12 laws are the observations of a man who watched people fail to make this transition, who saw capable individuals operating from need and fear, and the desperate management of how they appeared, and who noted precisely the ways in which those dependencies were exploited. The laws are not 12 things to do. They are 12 places where legible people are routinely controlled, and 12 corresponding observations about what breaks that control. The folded map is not a technique. It is the consequence of becoming someone whose interior is genuinely more developed, more stable, and more self-sufficient than what is visible on the surface. You cannot fold a map you have not first drawn. And the drawing requires the work of self-knowledge, of genuine alternative building, of practicing restraint in the specific situations where you are most reactive. This work is not glamorous. It does not produce immediate results. It produces over time a person who is genuinely harder to read, genuinely less needy, and genuinely more free to act. Not because they are performing power, but because they have removed enough of the leverage points that power over them requires actual engagement with who they are, rather than the operation of a pattern they have not bothered to examine. The map they use to find you is the one you drew yourself. Most of us move through our lives fully legible, our needs visible, our reactions predictable, our patterns available to anyone who pays attention. We are not controlled because someone is sinister. We are controlled because we are readable, and readable things can be operated. Machiavelli did not give us 12 laws. He gave us one observation, repeated 12 ways. The distance between how you appear to work and how you actually work is the space in which your life is managed. Close that distance, become genuinely and from the inside out less predictable, less needy, less explained, and you begin for the first time to hold your own map. The map they use to find you is the one you drew yourself. Have you noticed the specific places where you are most legible, most predictable, most easily moved? If that recognition landed, type "I fold my map" in the comments. Not for me, but for you. And if this video gave you something real, please like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Wise Daily. Every video on this channel is built to give you one thing: the philosophical tools to live with more power, more clarity, and more intention. We'll see you in the next one. Machiavelli gave us the external map, the principles by which power moves through social and political environments. But there is a philosopher who spent his life working on the internal one, the map of the self, the understanding of what drives you, what you can and cannot control, and how to navigate both without losing yourself. That philosopher is Marcus Aurelius, and what he wrote in the Meditations about becoming genuinely ungovernable by your own worst impulses is the subject of our next video.